I'll never forget the moment Diane's lawyer stood up in that courtroom and said I hit my son. The words hung in the air like poison. I sat frozen in my chair, hands gripping the armrest so hard my knuckles went white. My ex-wife dabbed her eyes with tissue, playing the victim perfectly. Tyler, my 15-year-old boy, sat beside her looking at the floor. He wouldn't even glance my way. The judge peered over his reading glasses, studying me like I was already guilty. "Mr. Porter," he said slowly, "if these allegations are true, you understand you won't be seeing your son again." My throat closed up. I tried to speak, to defend myself, but nothing came out. Diane's performance continued. More tears, more trembling hands. Her mother sat in the back row, arms crossed, nodding along like she'd rehearsed this moment. And maybe she had. The lawyer shuffled papers dramatically and said they had evidence of my violent behavior. Evidence? What evidence? I'd never raised a hand to anyone, especially not Tyler. But looking around that courtroom, I could see it. People believed her. The lie was working. When the judge finally let me speak, my voice cracked. "Your Honor, none of this is true. I would never hurt Tyler. Never." But before I could finish, Diane's mother shot up from her seat. "That's what abusers always say," she shouted. The judge banged his gavel, told her to sit down, but the damage was done. The whole room shifted. Whispers rippled through the gallery. Diane's lawyer smiled slightly, like everything was going according to plan. I looked at my own lawyer, desperate for help, but even he seemed rattled. Tyler still wouldn't look at me. His shoulders were hunched, his hands folded tight in his lap. He looked smaller than usual, like he was trying to disappear. "Your Honor," Diane's lawyer continued, "for the safety of the child, we're requesting immediate suspension of visitation rights." My heart dropped into my stomach. The judge paused, flipped through some papers, then nodded. "Visitation is temporarily suspended until we can review additional evidence. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks. The gavel came down again. That sound echoed in my chest. I stood up slowly, legs shaking, and walked out of that courtroom feeling like I just lost everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch in the dark, scrolling through old text messages with Tyler. There were hundreds of them. Jokes about movies we watched together. Photos of us fishing last summer. Conversations about homework and soccer practice. "Love you, Dad. Thanks for helping with my science project. Can we get pizza this weekend?" These weren't the words of a scared kid. These were real. These were us. But then I noticed something. The messages stopped 3 weeks ago. Just stopped. No replies to anything I sent. At first, I thought he was busy or mad about something small. Now I realize the truth. Diane had cut me off. I tried calling Tyler's number. It rang once, then went to generic voicemail. Not even his voice. I called again. Same thing. My hand started shaking as I opened my contacts and stared at his name. How long had his number been changed? How long had Diane been controlling his phone, deleting my messages, making sure he never heard from me? I felt sick. She'd built a wall between us, brick by brick, and I hadn't even noticed until it was too late. The next morning, I drove to the grocery store and ran into Janet, a neighbor who used to babysit Tyler when he was little. She saw me and immediately looked away, pretending to read a cereal box label. "Janet." I called out. She flinched. "I'm sorry, Mark. I really am." She started to walk away, but I followed. "Sorry for what?" She stopped, sighed, and finally looked at me. Her eyes were full of pity. "Diane's been telling everyone you hurt Tyler, that you have anger problems, that he's scared of you." My stomach turned. "That's not true. None of it's true." Janet shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know what to believe anymore, but people are talking." Over the next few days, I learned the full extent of Diane's smear campaign. She'd told the school counselor I was unstable. She'd posted vague, emotional messages on social media about protecting her son from danger. She whispered to every parent at Tyler's soccer games. My reputation was crumbling. One neighbor even crossed the street to avoid me. Another stopped responding to my emails about a community project. I was being erased, painted as a monster, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Not yet. I needed to get away, even for an hour. I drove to my late father's house on the edge of town. The place had been sitting empty for months, waiting to be sold. I walked through quiet rooms, breathing in the stale air and old memories. In the living room, I found a dusty picture frame on the mantel. Inside was a photo of Tyler and me from 2 summers ago. We were standing by a lake, both muddy and grinning, holding up a tiny fish Tyler had caught. He was so proud. I remembered that day perfectly. The sun, the laughter, the way he kept saying, "Dad, did you see that? Did you see?" I held the frame in my hands and felt something crack open inside me. This was real. That boy in the photo loved me, and I loved him. I wasn't going to let Diane take that away. I carried the picture back to my car and set it on the passenger seat. It became my anchor, my reminder. That night, my lawyer called. "Mark, I got bad news. Diane's filing for full custody, and she's bringing her mother to testify." I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair. "Of course she is." "We'll fight this," he said. But his voice didn't sound confident. 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. The court had assigned a family counselor to evaluate my relationship with Tyler. Her name was Dr. Avery, and we'd meet the following week. I didn't know what to expect. Another person ready to believe Diane's lies? Another obstacle? But when I sat down in Dr. Avery's small office, something felt different. She was young, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes and a calm voice. She asked me questions, not accusations. She took notes without judgment. I told her everything. About the texts, about Diane's campaign, about how Tyler used to call me every night before bed, and now I couldn't even reach him. Dr. Avery listened carefully, then leaned forward. "Mr. Porter, I've reviewed the initial statements from both parties. Can I be honest with you?" I nodded. "Your son doesn't sound afraid of you in any of these reports." He sounded confused. Those words hit me like a lifeline. Someone finally saw it. Someone finally questioned the narrative. "Keep documenting everything," she said quietly. "Messages, dates, witnesses. I'll do my part." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. The court finally arranged a supervised visit. I hadn't seen Tyler in almost 2 months. When he walked into the small visitation room, I barely recognized him. He looked taller, but thinner. His eyes were tired. He sat down across from me, hands folded on the table, and said nothing. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. He glanced up briefly, then back down. "Hi." We sat in painful silence for a moment. I wanted to hug him, to tell him everything would be okay, but I didn't want to scare him or break some invisible rule Diane had set. "How's school?" I asked. "Fine." "Still playing soccer?" "Yeah." Every question got the same flat response. It was like talking to a stranger. Then I asked about his science project, the one we'd started together months ago. His face twitched slightly. "Mom said not to talk about that," he muttered. My heart sank. But then, when the supervisor turned to check her phone, Tyler leaned forward just a little. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Dad, I know you didn't do it." Those 7 words changed everything. I stared at him, throat tight, trying not to cry. Before I could respond, the supervisor looked back up, and Tyler pulled away, silent again. But I'd heard him. He knew. I started noticing a pattern during the visits. Diane would always be nearby, phone in hand, recording me. She wanted me to snap, to yell, to give her real evidence of anger. But I refused. I stayed calm, spoke softly, smiled even when it hurt. One visit, her mother showed up with juice boxes. Tyler reached for one, and she accidentally spilled it all over my shirt. She gasped dramatically. "Oh my goodness. Mark, I'm so sorry." Her tone was anything but sorry. She looked at the supervisor, waiting for me to react. I could feel the trap closing. But I just smiled, grabbed a napkin, and said, "Don't worry, I'll clean it. Accidents happen." Her face fell. The supervisor wrote something down. Diane, watching from the doorway, looked annoyed. Their little trap had failed. I'd learned something important. They wanted me to break. They needed me to be the villain they described, but I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I'd be patient, kind, and strategic, because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Tyler, and I wasn't going to let him down. While gathering documents from my lawyer, I stumbled onto something I hadn't expected. Bank statements from our old joint account, the one Diane and I had shared before the divorce. I started going through them line by line. That's when I noticed it. Withdrawals. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars, going back months before she even filed for divorce. She'd been siphoning money the whole time, quietly draining our savings while pretending everything was fine. I documented every transaction, highlighted the dates, and forwarded everything to my lawyer. But then I found something even worse. Buried in my email spam folder was a forwarded message sent by mistake from Diane's account to mine months ago. It was a conversation between her and her lawyer. We need to paint him as unstable. Her lawyer had written, angry, unpredictable. If we can make the judge believe he's a threat, we can push for full custody and increase support payments. Diane had replied, I can make that work. He's too passive to fight back anyway. I read it 3 times, handshaking. This wasn't just a bitter divorce. This was a calculated plan to destroy me, and she'd almost succeeded. Dr. Avery called me into her office a week later. She sat across from me with a thick folder in front of her. I've been reviewing everything, she said, and I'm recommending an independent forensic evaluation. What does that mean? I asked. It means a third-party psychologist will assess both you and Diane separately. It adds objectivity. And honestly, Mr. Porter, the inconsistencies in her story are starting to pile up. I felt relief wash over me. But Dr. Avery's face turned serious. You should know, when I suggested this in my report to the court, Diane didn't take it well. That was an understatement. The next court session, when the judge announced a forensic evaluation, Diane exploded. She stood up, face red, voice shaking. You're turning my son against me. This is ridiculous. Her lawyer tried to calm her down, but she kept shouting. The judge banged his gavel. Mrs. Porter, sit down, or I'll hold you in contempt. She finally sat, breathing hard, glaring at me like this was all my fault. But the damage was done. The judge had seen her lose control. The mask had slipped just a little, and that was enough. Late one night, I sat in my kitchen going through old voicemails. I'd been deleting them for weeks, trying to make space on my phone. But then I heard one I'd forgotten about. It was from Diane, left by accident about 6 months ago. She'd meant call someone else, but her phone had dialed me instead. Her voice was casual, almost laughing. Yeah, Mark's actually a great dad. Tyler adores him. But that's not the point anymore. This is about what I deserve. I'm not letting him walk away with half of everything just because he's nice. I froze, played it again. He's actually a great dad. She'd admitted it, on tape, to someone else. I immediately saved the file, backed it up, and sent it to my lawyer with shaking hands. This was it. Proof that she knew I wasn't a threat, that she was lying for money and control. My lawyer responded within minutes. This changes everything. Don't delete it. I sat back in my chair, staring at my phone. The truth had been hiding in my voicemail this whole time. And now, finally, it was coming to light. Tyler's school called one afternoon. There had been an incident. He'd gotten into a fight with another student, something completely unlike him. Both parents were asked to come in. I arrived early. Diane showed up 15 minutes late, flustered and defensive. The school counselor, Mrs. Ramirez, sat us down separately first. When it was my turn, she asked how things were at home. Complicated. I admitted we're in the middle of a tough custody situation. She nodded, writing something down. Then she said, Tyler's been struggling. His grades are slipping. He seems anxious. I felt a pang of guilt. I haven't been able to see him much. His mom's restricted my access. Mrs. Ramirez paused. I see. After the meeting, she walked me to the door. But before I left, she handed me a folded piece of paper. Tyler asked me to give this to you, she whispered. I waited until I was in my car to unfold it. The handwriting was messy, rushed. Dad, I hate lying about you. I'm sorry. Please don't give up. I held that note like it was made of gold. My son was still in there, still fighting. And so was I. A week later, Diane submitted new evidence to court. Photos of bruises on Tyler's arm. She claimed I had grabbed him during our last visit, but I'd been so careful. I hadn't touched him beyond a brief handshake. Something didn't add up. My lawyer requested the metadata on the photos. When we got it back, the timestamps didn't match. The pictures were taken 2 days after our visit, not during it. Even more suspicious, Tyler had been at school both those days. Attendance records proved it. If he'd had visible bruises, the school would have reported it. They're legally required to, but there were no reports, no nurse visits, nothing. My lawyer smiled when he saw the discrepancy. She faked them, he said quietly, probably makeup, and she got sloppy with the dates. What do we do? I asked. He leaned back in his chair. We wait. We'll bring this up at the right moment. Timing is everything. I trusted him, but waiting felt like torture. The next court date arrived. Diane came in looking fragile, dressed in soft colors. Hair pulled back. She took the stand and told her story again, voice trembling. She described me as angry, controlling, violent. She cried. She shook. The courtroom fell silent, hanging on every word. I wanted to scream, but I stayed still, hands folded, face calm. My lawyer had told me to show no emotion, no matter what she said. Let her perform, he'd said. The truth will speak for itself. But watching her lie so effortlessly, so convincingly, made me feel helpless. Then, just as the judge was about to call a recess, Dr. Avery stood up from the back of the room. Your Honor, I have new material evidence that may be relevant to this case. The judge raised an eyebrow. Approach. Dr. Avery walked forward with a sealed envelope. She handed it to the judge, who opened it carefully and began reading. His expression changed. Diane's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. And for the first time in months, I felt like maybe, just maybe, the tide was turning. Inside that envelope were screenshots, text messages, but not from me, from Diane. Dr. Avery had received them from Tyler during one of their counseling sessions. He'd been holding on to them for weeks, scared to show anyone. They were messages Diane had sent to Tyler months ago, coaching him on what to say. Tell them your dad yelled at you. Say you felt scared when he picked you up. If they ask, say he grabbed your arm too hard. Every message was laid out in black and white. Proof of manipulation. Proof of lies. The judge read through them slowly, his jaw tightening. He looked up at Diane. Mrs. Porter, is this your phone number? Diane went pale. Her lawyer leaned over, whispering urgently, but she didn't answer. Mrs. Porter. The judge repeated, louder this time. She finally nodded, barely. Yes. The judge closed the folder. We'll need to verify the authenticity of these messages. Court is in recess for 1 hour. As people filed out, I caught Diane's eye. She looked away quickly, her face drained of color. For the first time, she knew she'd been caught. During the recess, I stepped outside for air. That's when I saw Tyler. He was standing by the courthouse steps, alone. Diane and her mother were inside, probably panicking with their lawyer. I walked over slowly. Tyler. He turned and his eyes filled with tears. Dad, I didn't mean to lie. She said we'd lose everything if I didn't say those things. She said you'd take all our money and leave us with nothing. I knelt down so we were eye level. Tyler, none of that's true. I would never abandon you. Never. He broke down, sobbing, and I pulled him into a hug. He clung to me like he hadn't in years. I'm so sorry, Dad. You don't have to be sorry, I whispered. You were scared. I understand. We stood there for a long moment, just holding each other. When we finally pulled apart, he wiped his eyes. The judge wants to talk to me, he said quietly. I nodded, then telling the truth, whatever that is. I'll support you no matter what. He took a deep breath and nodded back. Okay. When court resumed, the judge called for a special testimony. Tyler would speak directly to him, in chambers, with only a court recorder present. No lawyers, no parents, just the truth. We waited outside for over an hour. I paced the hallway, hands in my pockets, trying not to imagine what was being said. Finally, the door opened. Tyler walked out, eyes red but steady. The bailiff called us back inside. The judge sat at his bench, expression unreadable. He looked at Diane, then at me. I've heard testimony from your son, he began, and I've reviewed the text messages submitted by Dr. Avery. Tyler has confirmed that these messages are real and that he was coached by his mother to make false statements about his father. The courtroom went completely silent. Diane's face crumbled. Additionally, the judge continued, Tyler has requested to read a statement aloud. I'm going to allow it. Tyler stood up slowly and pulled out his phone. His hand shook, but his voice was clear. He began reading the texts his mother had sent him, one by one, out loud for everyone to hear. Diane's lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him off. Let the boy speak. Tyler's voice filled the courtroom. Every word was a nail in Diane's case. When he finished, he looked directly at the judge. My dad never hit me. He never yelled at me. My mom told him to say those things because she wanted full custody and more money. Diane's face was white. Her lawyer sat frozen beside her. Her mother, sitting in the back, suddenly stood up. This is your fault, boy. You're tearing this family apart. The bailiff moved toward her immediately. The judge banged his gavel. Ma'am, sit down or you'll be removed. She didn't sit. She kept shouting, pointing at Tyler, calling him ungrateful and manipulated. 2 bailiffs escorted her out. Her voice echoed down the hallway even after the doors closed. The judge turned back to Tyler. Thank you for your honesty, son. That took courage. Tyler sat down, exhausted. I wanted to run to him, but I stayed in my seat, hands folded, heart pounding. The judge shuffled his papers and looked at both lawyers. I'll make my ruling now. The judge removed his glasses and looked directly at Diane. Mrs. Porter, the evidence presented today is deeply concerning. You have manipulated your son, fabricated evidence, and committed perjury in this courtroom. I'm restoring joint custody to Mr. Porter, effective immediately. I felt my chest loosen for the first time in months. Furthermore, the judge continued, you are hereby warned that any further attempt to alienate the child from his father will result in a review of your custody rights. Do you understand? Diane nodded, tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of anger. The judge turned to me. Mr. Porter, I apologize for what you've endured. The court was misled, and that's unacceptable. I nodded, unable to speak. Outside the courtroom, people whispered. A few looked at me with apology in their eyes. Diane walked past me without a word, her lawyer trailing behind. But before she reached the door, she stopped and turned back. Her voice was cold. You think you've won? Just wait. Then she was gone. I didn't care. I had Tyler back. That was all that mattered. Weeks later, Diane's lies caught up with her in ways I never expected. Her employer launched an internal investigation after someone forwarded them copies of the court transcripts. She'd been using her company email to communicate with her lawyer about the case, including messages about fabricating evidence. Within days, she was fired. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just focused on Tyler. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel like justice. One afternoon, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Diane's lawyer, an apology. He wrote that he'd been misled by his client and that he regretted not questioning her story sooner. He wished Tyler and me well. I read it twice, then filed it away. The apology didn't change what had happened, but it was something, a small acknowledgement that the truth mattered. Tyler and I started rebuilding. Slowly, carefully, we went fishing again. We watched movies. We talked about everything and nothing. He was healing. So was I. The neighbors who had once avoided me started coming around again. Janet apologized in person, tears in her eyes. I should have known better, she said. I told her it was okay. I understood. Others weren't as direct. They just waved from across the street or stopped to chat about the weather. The whispers changed. Instead of abuser, people now murmured wrongfully accused. Diane's reputation crumbled. One afternoon, I saw her moving out of her house. A small U-Haul was parked in the driveway. Her mother was there too, loading boxes in silence. Diane saw me watching from my car. For a moment, our eyes met. She looked away first. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. This whole battle had cost us all something. Her, me, Tyler. But at least now, the truth was out. People knew, and that mattered. Tyler officially moved back in with me part-time. I set up his old room exactly how he liked it. Blue walls, posters of his favorite bands, a new desk for homework. The first night he stayed over, we made spaghetti together. It was messy and chaotic and perfect. At dinner, he asked me a question I wasn't ready for. Dad, do you still love Mom? I set down my fork and thought carefully. Love changes, son. I said finally, what I felt for her once was real. But when someone hurts you the way she hurt us, it's hard to hold on to that. What I know for sure is that I love you, and that'll never change. He nodded slowly, processing. I don't think I love her the way I used to either, he admitted quietly. And I feel bad about that. You don't have to feel bad. I told him, you're allowed to feel however you feel. That's okay. We finished dinner in comfortable silence. Later, he fell asleep on the couch watching a movie. I covered him with a blanket and just watched him breathe. My son, home. A few weeks later, Dr. Avery called me with unexpected news. Diane's mother had filed a formal complaint against her, claiming bias in the case. She's trying to get my evaluation thrown out, Dr. Avery said. But the board reviewed everything, including Tyler's testimony. They cleared me. I'm sorry you had to deal with that, I said. It's part of the job, she replied. But there's something else you should know. Diane's mother had a minor stroke last week. She's in the hospital. I paused. Is she okay? Stable. But Tyler's been asking to visit her. That surprised me. After everything his grandmother had done, he still wanted to see her. What do you think? Dr. Avery asked. I thought about it. If Tyler wants to go, I'll take him. 2 days later, we drove to the hospital. Tyler was quiet the whole way. When we got to her room, Diane's mother was awake, but weak. She saw me standing in the doorway, and her face crumpled. She tried to speak, but couldn't manage much. Finally, she mouthed 2 words. You're right. I nodded. I didn't need her to say more. Tyler sat by his grandmother's bedside for a while, holding her hand. I stayed near the door, giving them space. When we left, Tyler turned to me. I'm glad we came, he said. Even after everything? He nodded. She's still my grandma, and I think she knows she was wrong. I squeezed his shoulder. That's big of you, son. We drove home in peaceful silence. Over the next few months, life settled into a new rhythm. Tyler spent half his time with me, half with Diane. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Diane and I barely spoke. When we did, it was only about logistics, drop-off times, school events, doctor appointments. The anger had faded into something quieter. Not forgiveness, exactly, but acceptance. Tyler thrived. His grades came back up. He rejoined the soccer team. He laughed again, really laughed. And that was everything. One evening, he looked up from his homework and said, Dad, thanks for not giving up. I smiled. I'll never give up on you. Ever. Months later, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. Tyler was inside, talking on the phone with a friend, his laughter drifting through the open window. I thought about everything we'd been through. The courtroom, the lies, the fear, the moment I thought I'd lost him forever. But we'd made it through, not by fighting dirty, not by sinking to Diane's level, by standing still, by telling the truth, by letting the lies destroy themselves. Dr. Avery had been right. The truth always finds a way to surface. It just takes patience. Tyler came outside and sat beside me. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Just how far we've come," I said. He nodded. "Yeah, it's been a lot. But we're okay now," I said. "We're more than okay." He smiled. "Yeah, we are." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Not because I'd won, but because my son was safe, loved, and home. That was all I'd ever wanted. That was everything.